Chapter 1. Foundations of Glass. Russell Mercer built his life on precision. As an architectural engineer who transformed abandoned buildings into modern marvels, he understood the importance of a solid foundation. At 42, he had constructed what he believed was the perfect life: a successful firm, a spacious home in the suburbs of Portland, and a 15-year marriage to Valerie, who had once been his college sweetheart. Their wedding photo sat prominently on his office desk. Russell with his broad shoulders and confident smile, Valerie with her copper hair and emerald eyes that had captivated him from their first meeting in advanced calculus. Next to it stood a more recent picture of their daughter, Audrey, now turning 13, a perfect blend of both parents with her father's analytical mind and her mother's artistic flair. "Working late again, Russ?" Dominic Sawyer, Russell's business partner and oldest friend, leaned against the doorframe. "Audrey's birthday party is tonight. Just wrapping up the Riverside project details before I head home." Russell closed his laptop and stood, stretching his back. "Val's been planning this dinner for weeks." Dominic nodded, but something flickered across his face, a momentary hesitation that Russell almost missed. "Give the birthday girl my best," he said finally, turning to leave. "You'll see her tomorrow at the family dinner," Russell called after him. "You're still coming, right?" Another pause. Of course." Russell arrived home to the sound of laughter spilling from the backyard. He followed it through the house, where streamers and balloons decorated the hallway. Outside, a group of teenage girls clustered around Audrey, who was opening presents beside the pool. Valerie moved among them, distributing cake on paper plates with 13 printed in bold colors. "Dad!" Audrey spotted him and waved enthusiastically. "Look what Dylan got me." She held up what appeared to be a custom skateboard. Russell frowned. "Dylan, my boyfriend," she said, rolling her eyes as if this were common knowledge. "I told Mom about him weeks ago." Russell glanced at Valerie, who gave him a tight smile before turning away to speak with her sister, Meredith. Russell felt a familiar pang, the sensation of being on the outside of his own family. It had been happening more frequently lately. Conversations that stopped when he entered a room, inside jokes he wasn't part of, plans made without his input. He moved through the party, making small talk with parents he barely knew, catching snippets of conversation that suggested everyone knew Dylan well. Even Meredith's husband, Preston, was discussing football with the boy, who had apparently been at their house multiple times. As the party wound down and the guests departed, Russell helped clean up while Audrey played with her new gifts. The tension in his shoulders slowly uncoiled as he thought about tomorrow's family dinner, a proper celebration where he could reconnect with everyone. His in-laws would be there, along with Dominic and a few close friends. A chance to feel centered again in his own life. "Can't wait for the big family dinner tomorrow," he said brightly, bagging the last of the gift wrapping. "My mother always said birthdays should be celebrated twice, once with friends, once with family." His sister-in-law, Meredith, laughed to sound like ice cracking. "Wait, you don't know? That was yesterday." Russell froze. "What?" His mother-in-law, Diane, pulled out her phone with a look of discomfort mixed with a strange satisfaction. "Here, see for yourself." She swiped through photos. The same dining room table where they had celebrated holidays for years, now laden with Audrey's favorite dishes. Toast being raised with everyone smiling. His father-in-law Gerald, Dominic and his wife, even Preston with his arm around Meredith. Everyone was there. Everyone except Russell. "There must be some mistake," he said, though the evidence was clear on the screen. Valerie snatched the phone from her mother's hand and shoved it into her purse. "Maybe take the hint next time," she snapped. The backyard fell silent. Audrey stared at her feet, suddenly fascinated by her shoelaces. No one would meet Russell's eyes except Diane, who watched him with a predatory curiosity. Russell didn't respond. His mind was already calculating, assembling pieces of a puzzle he hadn't known existed until now. The late nights when Valerie claimed to be with Meredith. The business trips that seemed to coincide with Dominic's absences from the office. The gradual exclusion from his daughter's life. He smiled, a cold, precise expression that made Diane take an involuntary step back. "I think it's time for cake," he said calmly, turning toward the house. I haven't had any yet. Behind him, he heard Meredith whisper to Valerie, "He's taking it better than I expected." They had no idea what he was capable of taking or giving back. Chapter 2: Fractures and Fault Lines. Russell spent the night on the sofa in his home office, staring at the ceiling and replaying years of interactions through a new lens. By dawn, he had compiled a mental inventory of suspicious circumstances, inconsistencies, and outright lies that had obscured the truth of his marriage. When he heard Valerie moving around the kitchen, he rose, showered in the guest bathroom, and dressed in one of the spare suits he kept for client emergencies. He found her sipping coffee and scrolling through her phone, seemingly unconcerned about the previous night's revelation. "Morning," he said, pouring himself coffee. "Audrey up yet?" "She's spending the day with Meredith," Valerie replied without looking up. "Preston's taking them shopping in Seattle." "Without asking me? Without even telling me?" His voice remained level, a feat of control that would have impressed even his most demanding clients. Valerie finally met his gaze. "It was decided at the dinner. The one you missed." "The one I wasn't invited to," he corrected. "Why, Val? What's happening to us?" She set down her phone with deliberate care. "Nothing's happening, Russell. Nothing has changed. You've always been distant, married to your work, not to us. So, this is punishment? Excluding me from my daughter's birthday celebration?" "It wasn't exclusion. You were working late, as usual. We had to reschedule, and then—" She shrugged. "It just happened. Things don't just happen, Val. Not things like this." He leaned forward. "Is there someone else?" The question hung in the air for 3 heartbeats before she laughed. A brittle sound with no humor. "That's your explanation? Then I must be cheating? God, Russell, maybe this is why I needed space from you. Everything is either perfect or broken with you. No in between." Russell nodded slowly. "I'm going to the office. We'll talk tonight." "Don't bother," she said, returning to her phone. "I'm having dinner with Diane. She's worried about me after your little scene yesterday." "My scene?" he echoed incredulously. Interesting perspective. At the office, Russell closed his door and pulled up the security system on his computer. As a precaution, he had installed cameras in their home years ago. Standard practice, he'd told Valerie, for a house with valuables. What he hadn't mentioned was the backup cloud storage that only he could access. He scrolled through footage from the past month, moving backward through time. Most days showed nothing unusual. Valerie working from home as a graphic designer, Audrey returning from school, the occasional visit from Meredith or delivery people. Then he found it. 3 weeks ago, while he was at a conference in Chicago. A familiar car in the driveway at 10:48 p.m. Dominic entering through the front door without knocking, carrying an overnight bag. Leaving the next morning at 6:15 a.m., looking rumpled but satisfied. The footage continued. Other late-night visits during Russell's absences. Whispered phone calls when Valerie thought no one was listening. Once, he even caught Audrey asking when Uncle Dom was coming over again, and Valerie hushing her with a nervous glance toward the camera. His oldest friend, his wife, his family. The betrayal was comprehensive. Russell shut down the footage and sat motionless, his mind working with the cold precision that had made him successful. He needed more than passive observation now. He needed to understand the full extent of the deception. He called his assistant. "Nora, cancel my appointments for the week. Family emergency." By noon, Russell had engaged a private investigator named Leo Brandt, a former client with a reputation for discretion. "I need everything," Russell told him during their meeting at a coffee shop 3 towns over. "Financial records, phone logs, hotel stays, gifts. And I need to know who else knew." "This kind of comprehensive background will take time," Leo warned. "You have 3 days," Russell replied, sliding across a check with a number that made the investigator's eyebrows rise. "I want to know exactly who I've been married to for 15 years. Over the next 72 hours, Russell maintained a facade of normalcy. He returned home each evening, endured cold dinners and colder conversations with Valerie, and made awkward attempts to connect with Audrey, who now regarded him with a teenager's disdain amplified by what she must have heard from others. On the 4th morning, Leo delivered a leather portfolio to Russell's office. "It's worse than you thought," he said simply. Russell opened it alone, methodically reviewing hundreds of pages of evidence. The affair with Dominic had begun nearly 2 years ago, shortly after Russell had made him a partner in the firm. There were hotel receipts, romantic restaurant bills, jewelry purchases, all funded by the company accounts that Dominic helped manage. More disturbing were the text messages Leo had recovered. Conversations between Valerie and Meredith discussing Russell with contempt. Exchanges with Diane plotting how to gradually separate him from family events. Even messages to Audrey, subtly undermining her relationship with her father. "He's just like your grandfather," Valerie had written to their daughter. "Obsessed with work, oblivious to what's happening right in front of him. Don't expect him to show up for your real life." The final page was a legal document. Preliminary divorce papers that Valerie had drawn up 3 months ago, but hadn't yet filed. The terms were breathtaking in their audacity. Full custody of Audrey, the house, half of Russell's business, and substantial alimony. Russell closed the portfolio, thanked Leo, and transferred the remainder of his payment. Then he drove to the bank and opened a new account under his personal corporation, one that Dominic had no access to. By closing time, he had transferred enough funds to sustain operations for 6 months without touching the main company accounts. That night, when he returned home, Valerie was waiting in the living room. "We need to talk," she said, her voice artificially gentle. "About us. About the future." Russell set down his briefcase. "Yes," he agreed calmly. "We certainly do." Chapter 3. The Architect's Blueprint. "I want a divorce," Valerie stated, maintaining eye contact as if challenging him to object. "I've been unhappy for a long time, Russell." He nodded, settling into the armchair across from her. "Because of Dominic?" Her eyes widened fractionally, the only indication of surprise. "This isn't about anyone else. This is about us not working anymore." "Interesting," Russell said, opening his briefcase and removing Leo's portfolio. "Because I have extensive documentation suggesting otherwise." She stiffened. "You had me investigated?" "That's insane, Russell. This is exactly the controlling behavior I'm trying to escape." Rather than argue, he simply opened the portfolio and began laying out photographs. Valerie and Dominic entering hotel rooms, dining in secluded restaurants, embracing in what they thought were private moments. 2 years, Russell said quietly. "At least 2 years of my life built on lies." Valerie's composure cracked. "It just happened." "Things don't just happen," he interrupted, echoing their earlier conversation. "Not things like this." She changed tactics, her voice hardening. "Fine. Yes, Dominic and I are in love. He sees me, really sees me. When was the last time you looked at me as anything other than another project to perfect? And Audrey? Was turning my daughter against me also necessary for your happiness? She deserves to know what kind of man her father really is." Russell laughed, a sound so devoid of mirth that Valerie flinched. "And what kind is that exactly? The kind who works tirelessly to provide for his family? The kind who trusted his wife and best friend implicitly? Or perhaps you mean the kind who doesn't yet know what he's capable of when everything he values is stolen from him?" Fear flickered across Valerie's face before she masked it with disdain. "Are you threatening me? Because these divorce papers," she pulled out her own folder, "already account for emotional abuse." "I'm not threatening anything," Russell replied. "I'm simply informing you that I'm aware of the situation. Now, you mentioned divorce, and I agree it's necessary. But your terms are unacceptable." "You haven't seen my terms," she snapped. "Haven't I?" He extracted the draft divorce papers from his portfolio. "Filed under your maiden name with your attorney, Trevor Walsh. Quite ambitious, especially considering the prenuptial agreement you signed." Valerie paled. "How did you?" "I prefer to be thorough," Russell interrupted. "And speaking of thoroughness, I should mention that I've already consulted with the top 5 divorce attorneys in the state. Conflict of interest prevents them from representing you now." "That's dirty," she hissed. "No, Val. Dirty is conspiring with my in-laws to exclude me from my daughter's life. Dirty is embezzling from my company to finance your affair. Dirty is planning to take everything I've built while portraying me as an absentee father and husband." Valerie stood abruptly. "You can't prove any of that." "I don't need to prove it to know it's true," Russell said, closing his portfolio. But rest assured, I can prove whatever becomes necessary. Now, I suggest we handle this civilly. I'll have my attorney contact you with terms that reflect the prenuptial agreement. In the meantime, I'll be staying at the Harbor View Hotel. Running away? She sneered, regaining some confidence. Typical. Not running, Val. Planning. He stood and retrieved his briefcase. Oh, and you might want to warn Dominic. The firm's financial audit begins tomorrow. He left her standing in the living room, her face a mask of shock and rage. As he drove to the hotel, Russell made 3 calls. First to a locksmith to change the locks on his office, then to the company's accountant to initiate an emergency audit, and finally to a realtor to quietly list their vacation cabin, solely in his name, for immediate sale. By midnight, Russell had converted the hotel suite into a command center, with laptops, documents, and whiteboards filling the space. On the central board, he wrote 3 names: Valerie, Dominic, Diane. Beneath each, he began listing weaknesses, pressure points, and secrets that Leo had uncovered. For Valerie, it was her carefully constructed social image and her artwork, a series of sculptures she'd been working on for a gallery submission. For Dominic, his gambling debts and a DUI that Russell had helped expunge years ago. For Diane, her precarious financial situation that Valerie's father had kept hidden from everyone. Russell worked through the night, constructing a plan with the same methodical precision he applied to his architectural projects. By dawn, he had a blueprint for a different kind of demolition, one that would leave no visible scars but would collapse the foundations of those who had betrayed him. When his phone rang at 6 a.m., he answered without checking the caller ID. Russell. Dominic's voice was cautious, hesitant. Val called me. We need to talk. Yes, Russell agreed, surveying his completed plan. We certainly do. Chapter 4, Opening Gambit. The conference room of Mercer and Sawyer Architectural Engineering felt smaller than usual as Russell sat at the head of the oval table, facing Dominic across its polished surface. Between them lay financial reports, project files, and client contracts, the anatomy of the business they had built together over a decade. An audit? Dominic's voice strained for casualness. Seems excessive for a routine financial review. Russell smiled thinly. Nothing routine about embezzlement, Dom. Embezzle. Dominic's face flushed. That's a serious accusation. It's not an accusation yet, Russell replied, flipping open a folder. Just an observation about certain irregularities. Hotel rooms in Boston when you were supposedly meeting clients in Chicago. Jewelry purchases classified as client appreciation gifts. Restaurant bills for 2 coded as business dinners. Dominic swallowed. I can explain. I'm sure you can, Russell interrupted. And you'll have plenty of opportunity when the forensic accountants arrive this afternoon. Russell, come on. We've been friends for 20 years. Were we? Russell leaned forward. I thought so. Until I saw the footage of you entering my home at night while I was away. Until I read your messages to my wife planning my daughter's birthday dinner. The one I wasn't invited to. Dominic paled. It's not what you think. It never is it? Tell me, was it worth it? Betraying me for Val. I love her, Dominic said finally, a note of defiance entering his voice. I've always loved her, even before you met her in college. Russell absorbed this new information with unsettling calm. Fascinating. So this has been brewing for, what, 20 years? No, I respected your marriage. I never would have. Dominic stopped himself. Never would have what? Pursued her if she hadn't been unhappy? If I hadn't been such a terrible husband? Russell's voice remained steady. Save the justifications. I'm not interested in why you did it. Only in what happens next. Which is what, exactly? Dominic asked, wariness replacing defensiveness. Russell slid a document across the table. Your resignation, effective immediately. You'll sell your partnership shares back to me at the original purchase price. No appreciation. In exchange, I won't press charges for the financial improprieties. You're blackmailing me. I'm offering you a way out that doesn't involve prison, Russell corrected. Your choice. Dominic stared at the document, then at Russell. And what about Val? My wife is no longer your concern. If you hurt her, I don't hurt people, Dom. I simply ensure they experience the natural consequences of their choices. Russell checked his watch. You have until the accountants arrive at 2 o'clock. Then this offer expires. After Dominic left, resignation signed, office belongings in a cardboard box, Russell called an emergency staff meeting. With calm authority, he informed the team that Dominic had resigned for personal reasons and that all his projects would be redistributed. No one questioned the explanation, though Nora, his assistant, gave him a look that suggested she suspected more. By evening, Russell had secured the company's financial stability and removed Dominic's access to all accounts and client files. One element of his plan was complete. Now, for the more delicate matter. He drove to his in-laws' sprawling colonial home in the historic district, where Gerald and Diane had lived for 40 years. Gerald answered the door, his imposing frame belying his 70 years. "Russell," he said, surprise evident in his voice. "Didn't expect to see you." "I need to speak with both of you," Russell replied. "It's important." Inside, Diane was arranging flowers in the living room, her spine stiffening when she saw Russell. "Well, this is unexpected. Valerie's not here." "I know," Russell said, taking a seat uninvited. "I came to see you." Gerald settled into his favorite armchair. "What's this about, son?" "Respect," Russell answered, "and the lack of it I've experienced in this family." He turned to Diane. "Starting with you." Diane's carefully manicured fingers paused on a lily stem. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The dinner you organized for my daughter, without me. The text you sent Valerie about finally being rid of him. The conversations with Meredith about how to divide the family assets once Valerie left me." Russell listed each point calmly. "Should I continue?" Gerald looked between them, confusion giving way to understanding. "Diane? What is he talking about?" "He's making things up," she insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. "He's trying to turn you against me because Valerie finally stood up to him." "Interesting interpretation," Russell mused. "Gerald, did you know that Diane has been withdrawing money from your retirement account for the past 3 years? About $300,000 in total." The color drained from Diane's face. "That's a lot, is it?" Russell produced a bank statement from his pocket and handed it to Gerald. "Your accountant was quite helpful when I mentioned potential financial elder abuse." Gerald scanned the document, his expression hardening. "Diane, is this true?" "I had expenses," she said defensively. "Family needs that you wouldn't understand. Like funding Valerie's affair with Dominic?" Russell suggested. "Or perhaps the gambling debts Preston accumulated that Meredith couldn't cover?" Gerald's hands trembled as he set down the statement. "I want you both out of my house. Now." "Gerald, please," Diane began. "Out," he thundered, rising from his chair with surprising agility. "Russell, we'll discuss this tomorrow. I need time to process." Russell nodded, standing. "Of course. I just thought you should know what's been happening in your own home." He paused at the door. "And Gerald, I've instructed my attorney to help you secure your accounts. Free of charge." As he drove away, Russell watched in the rearview mirror as Diane frantically called someone on her phone, pacing on the front porch while Gerald closed the curtains against her. The second domino had fallen. Later that night, in his hotel room, Russell received a text from Valerie. "What have you done?" "Mom's hysterical. Dominic's not answering his phone, and Meredith says Preston is talking about leaving town. Stop this now." Russell didn't reply. Instead, he placed a call to a gallery owner in Seattle, an old client who owed him a favor. "Boyd? Russell Mercer. Remember that exhibition space we discussed? I'd like to make a substantial donation to secure it for a very specific artist." Chapter 5. The Queen's Sacrifice. The invitation arrived at Russell's hotel suite by courier. Embossed cream cardstock announcing the opening of a new exhibition at the Westlake Gallery in Seattle. Featured artist, Valerie Mercer. Russell smiled at the irony. Valerie had been working toward this moment for years. Her debut as a serious sculptor, stepping out from the shadow of her commercial graphic design work. What she didn't know was that Russell had arranged it all, pulling strings with Boyd Winters, the gallery owner who had designed the foundation for Russell's first major project. The exhibition was scheduled for Friday evening, just 3 days away. Phase 2 of his plan was unfolding perfectly. That afternoon, Russell visited Audrey at school, signing her out for a family appointment. The school counselor gave him a sympathetic look as they left. "Your mom told you about the separation," Russell said as they drove toward the coast. Audrey stared out the window, her profile so similar to Valerie's that it made his chest ache. "She said you're trying to ruin everything. Is that what you believe?" She shrugged, the quintessential teenage response. "I don't know what to believe anymore. Everyone's lying." Russell nodded. "That's fair. So let me tell you the truth, and you can decide for yourself." For the next hour, as they walked along the rocky beach near the lighthouse where he had proposed to Valerie, Russell explained the situation in terms appropriate for a 13-year-old. He didn't vilify her mother, but didn't shield her from reality either. He showed her selected text messages, ones that pertained directly to Audrey's birthday dinner and the deliberate exclusion of her father. "Why would they do that?" Audrey asked, her voice small against the crashing waves. "People make choices based on what they want most," Russell replied. "Your mother wanted something different from what we had. That's her right. But how she went about it, that was wrong." And Uncle Dom? The hurt in her voice was palpable. He made his choice too. They sat on a driftwood log as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the sand. "What happens now?" Audrey finally asked. "That depends partly on you," Russell said. "I'll always be your father, no matter what. But I need to know if you want to be part of my life." Tears welled in her eyes. "Of course I do, even if it means seeing less of your mother, less of Meredith and Preston." She considered this, showing a maturity beyond her years. "Can I think about it?" "As long as you need." He handed her a small box. "Happy birthday. Your real present." Inside was a silver necklace with a lighthouse pendant, their special place. Audrey clutched it tightly, then asked to be taken to Valerie's. Russell drove her home, watching as she walked up the path without looking back. It hurt, but he understood. She needed time to reconcile the conflicting narratives of her life. The next day, Russell executed the third phase of his plan. He contacted Trevor Walsh, the attorney Valerie had consulted about divorce. "I understand you're representing my wife," Russell said when they met in Walsh's downtown office. Walsh, a sharp-featured man with calculating eyes, neither confirmed nor denied. "What can I do for you, Mr. Mercer?" "You can advise your client that I'm amenable to an equitable division of assets, provided certain conditions are met." Walsh raised an eyebrow. "Such as?" Russell slid a folder across the desk. "These are my terms. They're non-negotiable." The attorney scanned the documents, his expression revealing nothing. "These are unusual demands, but legally sound," Russell pointed out. "I'm not asking for anything unreasonable, just accountability. The public nature of this acknowledgement is essential," Russell finished. "I want everyone who has benefited from the lies to witness the truth." Walsh studied him for a moment. "I'll present these to Mrs. Mercer, but I doubt she'll agree." "She will," Russell assured him. "By Friday evening." "What makes you so confident?" Russell stood to leave. "Because by then, she'll understand exactly what's at stake." That evening, Russell received a furious call for Valerie. "A gallery opening?" she hissed. "You arranged this?" "Congratulations," he replied calmly. "Isn't this what you've always wanted? Recognition for your work. Not like this. Not as some twisted revenge plot." "Revenge?" Russell sounded genuinely surprised. "This is an opportunity, Val. Boyd Winters rarely features new artists." "And what's the catch?" she demanded. "There's always a catch with you." "No catch. Just an invitation. I'll be there, of course, to support your work." "Stay away from my exhibition," she warned. "Our name is still on the invitation," he reminded her. "Valerie Mercer. We're still married, remember? At least until you agree to my terms." He ended the call before she could respond. Then he made another call to Gerald. "I'd like you to accompany me to Valerie's exhibition on Friday," Russell said without preamble. Gerald's voice was tired. "Diane's already planning to attend, with Meredith and Preston." "I know. That's why I'm asking you to come with me instead." A pause. "Why should I?" "Because you deserve to see the full picture before deciding where your loyalties lie." Another longer pause. "What time should I be ready?" The pieces were aligning perfectly. Russell returned to his board, where Valerie, Dominic, and Diane's names were now joined by Meredith and Preston. Under each, he had noted actions taken and reactions observed. Only one element remained unaddressed: the sculptures themselves. Russell made a final call to Boyd Winters. "Has the collection been delivered?" he asked. "Yesterday," Boyd confirmed. "You were right about their quality. Provocative work. And my special request: the lighting is being installed as we speak. It'll be exactly as you specified." Russell thanked him and hung up, a sense of anticipation building. Friday would bring everything full circle. The day of the exhibition arrived with a clarity that seemed appropriate for what was to come. Russell dressed with particular care. A charcoal suit, crimson tie, Valerie's favorite color on him, and the cufflinks she had given him on their 10th anniversary. He collected Gerald at 6, noting the older man's haggard appearance. "Difficult few days?" Russell asked as they drove to Seattle. Gerald nodded grimly. "Diane's moved in with Meredith. She's claiming I've lost my mind, that you've manipulated me." "And what do you believe?" "I believe my bank statements," Gerald replied. "And the private investigator I hired confirmed everything else he told me." The Westlake Gallery was already crowded when they arrived, Seattle's art enthusiasts mingling with critics and collectors. Russell spotted Valerie immediately, resplendent in an emerald gown that matched her eyes, her copper hair swept into an elegant updo. She was speaking animatedly with a group of admirers, Diane and Meredith flanking her protectively. "Let's get a drink," Russell suggested to Gerald, steering him toward the bar set up in the corner. As they waited, Russell surveyed the room, noting the positions of Valerie's sculptures, 7 pieces arranged strategically throughout the space. Each was illuminated by precisely positioned spotlights, just as he had requested. Boyd Winters approached them, hand extended. "Russell, glad you can make it. And you must be Mr. Reynolds, Valerie's father. An honor to meet you, sir." Gerald shook his hand mechanically. "Quite a turnout. Indeed, your daughter's work has generated significant buzz. The series title, Betrayed Trust, really resonates with people." Russell suppressed a smile. Valerie had always been transparent in her art, even when she thought she was being subtle. "If you'll excuse me," Boyd said, "it's almost time for the formal introduction." As Boyd moved to the center of the gallery, Russell guided Gerald to a position with an unobstructed view of all 7 sculptures. The crowd quieted as Boyd welcomed everyone and began to extol Valerie's artistic vision. In Betrayed Trust, Valerie Mercer explores the complex dynamics of human relationships through abstract forms that nonetheless convey powerful emotions, Boyd announced. Each piece represents a facet of betrayal: the lies we tell, the truths we hide, the masks we wear. Valerie stepped forward to appreciative applause, her smile radiant until she spotted Russell and Gerald. Her expression faltered momentarily before she recovered. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "This collection represents 2 years of work inspired by—" She hesitated. "By personal experiences and observations." Russell raised his glass to her in a silent toast, his gaze unwavering. She looked away quickly, continuing her prepared remarks about artistic process and emotional authenticity. As she spoke, Russell reached into his pocket and pressed a small remote control. Instantly, the lighting in the gallery shifted, subtly at first, then more dramatically as ultraviolet elements activated within each spotlight. The sculptures began to transform. Invisible elements painted with UV-reactive pigments, added during the installation under Russell's direction, emerged across each piece. Words, dates, snippets of text messages, hotel receipts, all the evidence of Valerie's affair with Dominic and the conspiracy to exclude Russell from his family, rendered in glowing script across the very art that was meant to be her triumph. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the hidden messages became apparent. Valerie stopped mid-sentence, her face draining of color as she realized what was happening. "What is this?" she whispered, loud enough for those nearest to hear. Russell stepped forward. "It's the truth, Val, illuminated for everyone to see, just like your art was meant to do." Diane moved toward them, fury in her eyes. "You monster! How dare you ruin her moment?" "I didn't create these messages," Russell replied calmly. "I merely made them visible. Every word is authentic, straight from your phones, your emails, your secret conversations. The gallery had fallen silent, the audience transfixed by the unfolding drama and the transformed sculptures. Critics were already photographing the pieces, murmuring about meta-commentary and performance art about betrayal within betrayal. Gerald stood rigid beside Russell, his gaze fixed on a sculpture where his wife's messages about diverting his retirement funds were now clearly visible. "My God," he murmured. Meredith pushed through the crowd, dragging a reluctant Preston behind her. "This is slander. You'll be hearing from our lawyers." "Nothing slanderous about the truth," Russell countered. "But feel free to explain to a judge how the text, 'Russell needs to be bled dry in the divorce,' was taken out of context." Valerie finally found her voice, addressing the stunned audience. "I apologize for this interruption. My husband and I are going through a difficult separation, and this is his idea of revenge." "Not revenge," Russell corrected. "Accountability. You wanted recognition for your work, Val. All of it." He turned to Boyd. "Mr. Winters, I believe we discussed a special prize for the collection if purchased in its entirety." Boyd, professional to the core despite the chaos, nodded. $200,000 as agreed. "I'll take them," Russell said, producing a cashier's check. "Consider it a divorce settlement." Valerie's eyes widened. "You can't do this." "Actually, I can, and I'll be donating the collection to the Contemporary Art Museum, with the stipulation that they be displayed exactly as they appear now." He gestured to the glowing text that revealed her betrayal. "Permanently." As security discreetly ushered the most vocal spectators outside, Russell approached Valerie. "My attorney has the divorce papers ready. My terms are simple. I keep my company, you keep the house. Joint custody of Audrey. No alimony either way. And these," he gestured to the sculptures, "become part of your artistic legacy." Her voice shook with rage and humiliation. "You've destroyed me." "No, Val. You did that yourself. I'm just making sure the right story is told." He handed her his attorney's card. "You have until Monday to decide." As Russell guided a shell-shocked Gerald toward the exit, he felt a hand on his arm. It was Audrey, tears streaming down her face. "Dad," she whispered, "I want to go with you." He looked at his daughter, surprised. "Are you sure?" She nodded, the lighthouse pendant gleaming at her throat. "I made my choice." Chapter 6, Counterattack. The Sunday morning headlines in the Seattle Arts section read, "Betrayal Illuminated. Mercer Exhibition Sparks Controversy and Bidding War." Photos of Valerie's UV-exposed sculptures accompanied the article, which described the innovative dual-layer technique and raw emotional honesty of the work. Critics were divided, some calling it a breakthrough, others dismissing it as divorce drama masquerading as art. Russell read the coverage with satisfaction as he prepared breakfast in his newly rented waterfront condo. Audrey was still sleeping in the second bedroom, exhausted from the emotional turmoil of the past few days. She had called Valerie after they left the gallery, explaining her decision to stay with Russell. The conversation had ended with Valerie's shouting audible even through the phone. His satisfaction was short-lived. At 9 o'clock, his phone rang. Nora, his assistant, calling on a Sunday. "Russell," she sounded breathless. "Someone broke into the office last night. The police are here now." He arrived at Mercer and Sawyer, soon to be renamed Mercer Design. 20 minutes later, 2 police officers were cataloging the damage. Smashed computers, overturned furniture, project files strewn across the floor. But the most disturbing element was the message spray-painted across the main conference room wall. "You'll regret this." "Security cameras?" one officer asked. "Disabled before entry," the other replied. "Professional job." Russell surveyed the destruction calmly. "Any idea who might have done this, Mr. Mercer?" the first officer asked. "I have my suspicions," Russell said, "but no proof." After the police left, promising to increase patrols in the area, Russell began methodically sorting through the wreckage with Nora's help. "The backup servers weren't touched," she reported, "and the cloud storage is intact. We haven't lost any critical data." "They weren't after data," Russell replied. "This was a message." From Dominic? Possibly. Or someone acting on his behalf. Russell's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You think you're clever? This is just the beginning. Everyone will know what you really are. Should we hire security?" Nora asked, noting his expression. Already done, Russell assured her. But I need you to do something else. He handed her a USB drive. These files need to be delivered to every client we've worked with in the past 5 years. Today, Nora raised an eyebrow. On Sunday, especially on Sunday, Russell confirmed. When people are home with time to read. While Nora handled the digital distribution, Russell drove to Preston and Meredith's house in the suburbs. A for sale sign already stood in the front yard, their hasty reaction to the gallery incident. He parked across the street and waited. Within an hour, a taxi arrived, and Preston emerged from the house with multiple suitcases. He kissed Meredith goodbye on the porch, his body language suggesting this wasn't a joint trip. Russell waited until the taxi pulled away before approaching. Meredith spotted him immediately, her expression hardening. "Get off my property," she snapped. "Technically, it's the bank's property," Russell corrected. "At least according to the foreclosure notice that will arrive tomorrow." Meredith blanched. "What are you talking about?" "Preston's gambling debts. The ones you've been covering with money from your mother, who got it from your father's retirement account." Russell leaned against the porch railing. "I bought the debt this morning." "That's impossible. Those are private loans." "Not so private when they're from offshore entities eager to avoid scrutiny. They were quite happy to sell to a legitimate businessman for 80 cents on the dollar." Meredith's composure cracked. "What do you want from me? Haven't you done enough?" "Actually, no," Russell replied. "You helped orchestrate my exclusion from my daughter's life. You encouraged Valerie's affair. You laughed at that dinner, the one I wasn't invited to." "It was just a dinner," she protested. "It was a symbol of something much larger," Russell corrected. "And now you have a choice. Pay the debt in full by Friday or lose the house. That's $500,000. Where am I supposed to get that kind of money?" Russell shrugged. "Not my problem. Though I hear the gallery showing was quite successful. Perhaps your sister could help, if she's still speaking to you after you convinced her to destroy her marriage." He turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Preston left the country, by the way. Mexico, based on the ticket. I saw him checking online yesterday. I don't think he's planning to come back." Meredith's face crumpled. "You're a monster." "No," Russell replied calmly. "I'm an architect. I simply understand that when you remove a key support, the entire structure eventually collapses." By late afternoon, Russell's counteroffensive was in full swing. The files Nora had distributed contained evidence of Dominic's financial mismanagement and unprofessional conduct, carefully curated to protect client confidentiality while making it clear that Mercer Design was under new, more reliable management. The response was immediate, clients calling to confirm they would stay with Russell, expressing shock at Dominic's behavior. As dusk fell, Russell received another call from Valerie. "The museum rejected the sculptures," she said without preamble, her voice thick with barely contained fury. "No reputable gallery will touch my work now. Are you satisfied?" "Not yet," Russell answered honestly. "But I'm getting there. Meredith called me. What you did, buying Preston's debts, that's beyond cruel." "Is it?" "I consider it appropriate. Actions have consequences, Val. Even yours." A pause. "What will it take to end this?" "Just tell me." "I already have. Sign the divorce papers on my terms. Publicly acknowledge what you did. And then we can all move forward. I'll be destroyed professionally. Socially, so was I," Russell reminded her. "The difference is I didn't deserve it." After disconnecting, Russell checked on Audrey, who was completing homework at the dining table. "Everything okay?" he asked. She nodded tentatively. "Mom keeps calling. And Grandma Diane. You don't have to talk to them if you don't want to." "I know." She chewed her lip. "Dad, are you going to forgive Mom?" Eventually, Russell considered the question carefully. "Forgiveness isn't always the point, Audrey. Sometimes accountability is more important. But it hurts so many people. Grandpa Gerald, Uncle Preston, everyone. They hurt themselves," Russell corrected gently. "They made choices knowing they were wrong, believing there would be no consequences. That's not how the world works." Audrey nodded slowly. "Like in physics, every action has an equal and opposite reaction." "Exactly." Russell smiled at his daughter's insight. "The question isn't whether there will be a reaction, but what form it takes." Later that night, as Audrey slept, Russell received a final text from Valerie. "Fine. I'll sign your papers. But this isn't over. He smiled at the empty threat. Of course it wasn't over. It was merely entering its final phase. Chapter 7. Endgame. The law offices of Harrington and Blake occupied the 32nd floor of a downtown high-rise, offering panoramic views of the city skyline and harbor beyond. Russell arrived 15 minutes early for the divorce mediation, dressed in a steel gray suit that matched the overcast sky outside. Cynthia Blake, his attorney, greeted him in the reception area. "They're already here," she murmured. "All of them." Russell raised an eyebrow. "All?" "Valerie, her attorney, Dominic, Diane, Meredith. Even your father-in-law." "Interesting," Russell mused. "An audience for the finale." Cynthia studied him. "Are you sure about these terms? We could push for more, given the circumstances." "The terms are perfect," Russell assured her. "This isn't about money." They entered the conference room, where the tension was palpable. Valerie sat beside Trevor Walsh, her face a mask of cold dignity despite the dark circles under her eyes. Dominic sat behind them, while Diane and Meredith clustered together on the opposite side. Gerald sat alone at the far end of the table, separate from everyone. "Mr. Mercer," Walsh began formally, "my client has agreed to your proposed settlement terms, with one addition." He slid a document across the table. "A non-disclosure agreement. For all parties." Russell skimmed the document, then passed it to Cynthia without comment. She read it thoroughly before speaking. "This NDA would prevent my client from discussing the circumstances of the divorce with anyone," she observed, "including the events at the gallery exhibition." "Precisely," Walsh confirmed. "What's done is done, but there's no need for further public airing of private matters." Russell leaned forward. "I understand the desire for discretion, but I have a counter-proposal." He removed a folder from his briefcase. A public statement, jointly issued, acknowledging the facts of the situation. Valerie's composure finally broke. "You want me to publicly confess to an affair? To humiliate myself even further?" "I want the truth acknowledged," Russell corrected, "by everyone involved." Diane scoffed. "This is absurd. You've had your revenge, Russell. The gallery, the sculptures, buying Preston's debt. Isn't that enough?" "It would be," Russell agreed, "if this were about revenge. But it's not. It's about accountability." "Bullshit," Dominic interjected, speaking for the first time. "This is about control. It always has been with you, Russell. Everything perfect, everything in its place, including your wife." Russell turned to face his former friend. "Is that how you justified stealing from me, Dom? By telling yourself I somehow deserved it?" "You weren't there for her," Dominic insisted. "You were building your precious company, your reputation. She was alone. She was my wife," Russell replied simply. "And you were my friend." Walsh cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should focus on the agreement at hand." "No," Russell interrupted. "Let's be clear about why we're here. This isn't just about Valerie's affair or Dominic's betrayal. It's about a systematic effort to exclude me from my family, to turn my daughter against me, to prepare for a divorce designed to destroy me professionally and financially." He looked at each person in turn. Diane, who encouraged the affair and helped divert Gerald's retirement funds. Meredith, who hosted the clandestine meetings and convinced Preston to lie for her sister. Dominic, who embezzled from our company to finance his relationship with my wife. And Valerie, who orchestrated it all. The room fell silent. Gerald, who had remained quiet until now, finally spoke. "Is this true, Diane? All of it?" Diane couldn't meet his gaze. "Gerald, please. You don't understand." "I think I do," he said heavily. "I think I finally do." Russell removed the public statement from his folder and placed it on the table. "One signature from each of you acknowledging your role. Then we file the divorce agreement as written, and we all move forward. And if we refuse?" Meredith challenged. "Then I release everything," Russell said simply. "Every text, every email, every bank record. To the press, to your employers, to your friends. Total transparency." Trevor Walsh examined the statement. "This is remarkably restrained, given the circumstances. No specific details of the affair, no mention of financial improprieties. Just acknowledgement of betrayal of trust and actions taken to undermine the marriage. As I said, this isn't about humiliation," Russell reiterated. "It's about truth." Valerie studied him, truly seeing him perhaps for the first time in years. Why does this matter so much to you? The truth is already out there. The gallery, the sculptures. Because lies have power until they're acknowledged by those who told them, Russell replied. I won't live in a world where you get to rewrite history, where Audrey grows up believing I was the villain in this story. A heavy silence fell over the room. Finally, Valerie reached for a pen. Fine. If this ends it, I'll sign. One by one, they added their signatures. Dominic reluctantly, Diane with barely suppressed fury, Meredith with tears streaming down her face. Gerald signed last, his hand steady despite everything. It's done, Walsh announced, collecting the document. We'll file the divorce agreement today. It will be final in 90 days. As the others filed out of the conference room, Gerald approached Russell. I wanted you to know, I filed for divorce as well. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. Russell nodded. I'm sorry it came to this. Don't be, Gerald replied. The truth hurts, but lies destroy. You taught me that. He extended his hand. I hope you'll still allow me to see Audrey. Of course, Russell assured him, shaking his hand. You're still her grandfather. Last to leave was Valerie, hovering at the doorway after everyone else had gone. You've won, she said quietly. Destroyed us all. I hope it brings you peace. Russell considered her words. This wasn't a competition, Val. It was a correction. And us. 15 years just erased. Not erased, he countered. Redefined. We'll be co-parents to Audrey. Nothing more. She nodded slowly. You know, I did love you once. Very much. I believe you, Russell said. But love without respect isn't love at all. It's just another lie we tell ourselves. As Valerie left, Cynthia returned with the filed divorce papers. Congratulations, she said. You're almost a free man. Russell stared out at the skyline, watching storm clouds gathering over the harbor. Freedom was never the goal, he replied. Just clarity. Chapter 8. Reconstruction. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Russell stood in the lobby of a newly christened Mercer Designs headquarters. A renovated warehouse with exposed brick walls and steel beams that reflected his architectural philosophy. Honesty in materials, transparency in structure. The company had not only survived the scandal but thrived. When clients were forced to choose between Russell's proven reliability and Dominic's cheaper but questionable services, most chose Russell. Dominic's new venture, launched with Valerie's financial support, had secured only 2 small projects and was already rumored to be failing. The Anderson proposal is ready for review, Nora informed him, handing over a presentation folder. And Audrey called. She'll be late for dinner. Debate club meeting. Russell nodded, smiling at the mention of his daughter. At 14, Audrey was flourishing despite the family upheaval. She split her time between Russell's condo and Valerie's house, now significantly downsized after financial reality had forced her to sell the family home. Audrey had initially struggled with divided loyalties, but had gradually found her equilibrium, accepting both parents while understanding the truth of what had happened. As Russell reviewed the Anderson proposal in his office, his phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Russell Mercer, he answered. Mr. Mercer, this is Dr. Abigail Foster from Seattle General. I have you listed as an emergency contact for Gerald Reynolds. Russell's stomach tightened. What's happened? Mr. Reynolds suffered a stroke this morning. He's stable, but he's asking to see you. 30 minutes later, Russell stood beside Gerald's hospital bed. The once imposing man looked diminished against the white sheets, though his eyes remained alert. Didn't mean to disrupt your day, Gerald said, his speech slightly slurred from the stroke. Family comes first, Russell replied simply. Gerald smiled weakly. Still family, then? Even after everything. Some bonds transcend mistakes, Russell acknowledged. And you were more a father to me than my own ever was. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Gerald spoke again. Diane's contesting the divorce, claiming I'm not of sound mind. I'll have Cynthia call you. She knows specialists who can help establish competency. Thank you. Gerald hesitated. I saw Valerie yesterday. She seems lost. Russell didn't respond immediately. He had deliberately maintained minimal contact with Valerie, interacting only regarding Audrey's schedule and needs. The public statement had done its work. Their social circle now understood what had happened, without salacious details, but with enough clarity to prevent Valerie from portraying herself as the victim. Her art career had stalled after the gallery incident, though a few smaller venues had recently shown interest in her work. She made her choices, Russell finally said. Now she lives with them, as we all do, including you? Gerald asked. What choices are you living with? Russell considered the question. The choice to prioritize truth over comfort, justice over peace. And has it brought you happiness? Happiness wasn't the goal, Russell replied. But I sleep better now. After leaving the hospital, Russell drove to the lighthouse, his thinking place, where he had proposed to Valerie and where he had explained the truth to Audrey. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the rocky beach as he walked along the shore, contemplating Gerald's question more deeply. Was he happy? The anger that had fueled his meticulous revenge had burned away, leaving a cooler, clearer perspective. He had achieved exactly what he intended: accountability for those who betrayed him, preservation of his relationship with Audrey, and professional continuity. By those measures, he had succeeded completely. Yet something remained unresolved, not with Valerie or Dominic or the others, but within himself. The architect in him recognized that demolition was only the first step in rebuilding. The question was, what would he build now? His phone vibrated with a text from Audrey. Debate 1. Can we celebrate at Luigi's? Russell smiled, typing back, absolutely. Meet you there at 7. As he walked back to his car, he passed a woman photographing the lighthouse. She lowered her camera as he approached, revealing an open, intelligent face framed by dark curls. Perfect timing, she said, gesturing toward the horizon. The light's amazing right now. Russell followed her gaze to where the setting sun transformed the clouds into a canvas of amber and gold. It is, he agreed. Are you local? She asked. I'm doing a book on Pacific Northwest lighthouses. This one's architecture is particularly interesting. The reinforced concrete base with that unusual octagonal tower. I am local, Russell confirmed. And you're right about the design. They had to adapt it to withstand the coastal erosion patterns unique to this area. Her eyes lit with interest. You know your architecture. I should, he replied with a small smile. It's my profession. I'm Sophie, she offered, extending her hand. Sophie Lockhart, architectural photographer and lighthouse enthusiast. Russell Mercer, he said, shaking her hand. Architect, and he hesitated, work in progress. They talked for 20 minutes about lighthouse design, coastal engineering, and the interplay of functionality and aesthetics. For the first time in over a year, Russell found himself engaged in a conversation that had nothing to do with betrayal or revenge or the past. When he mentioned his dinner plans with Audrey, Sophie nodded in understanding. I won't keep you from your daughter, but if you're interested, I'm giving a presentation on architectural photography at the library next Thursday. Might give you some new perspectives for your work. I'd like that, Russell found himself saying, surprising himself with his genuine interest. As he drove to meet Audrey, Russell reflected that rebuilding wasn't necessarily about replacing what was lost. Sometimes it meant creating something entirely new, something stronger, with better foundations and clearer sightlines. The blueprint wasn't yet complete, but for the first time since that fateful birthday party, he felt ready to begin drafting it. Chapter 9. The Final Calculation. 1 year to the day after Audrey's fateful birthday party, Russell hosted a small gathering at his condo. Gerald was there, mostly recovered from his stroke, engaged in animated conversation with Sophie about her latest book project. Audrey flitted between the adults, now 15 and growing into a poised young woman with her father's analytical mind and emerging confidence. Russell observed them from the kitchen as he prepared coffee, feeling a sense of peace that had been elusive for so long. The past year had brought significant changes. Gerald's divorce from Diane had finally been settled. Audrey had adjusted to her new normal between two households, and Russell's firm had expanded with 3 new architects joining the team. His phone buzzed with a text from Nora. Sawyer Design officially filed for bankruptcy today. Thought you should know. Russell absorbed this information without surprise. Dominic's venture had been struggling for months, unable to secure major clients despite drastically undercutting competitors' bids. According to industry gossip, Dominic had grown increasingly desperate, cutting corners on materials and design safety to compensate for his financial shortfall. Another text followed. Also, V was at the office earlier. Left something for you. This was unexpected. Russell and Valerie maintained strict boundaries, communicating only about Audrey through scheduled calls or emails. She had never visited his office. Everything okay? Sophie asked, appearing in the kitchen doorway. Over the past 6 months, she had become an increasingly important part of Russell's life. First as a friend who shared his passion for structural integrity and design philosophy. Then as something more. Yes, he assured her. Just work. She studied him with the same attention she gave to her photographic subjects. Russell Mercer, you're a terrible liar, which is actually one of your better qualities. He smiled, conceding the point. Apparently Valerie left something in my office today. Ah, Sophie nodded. Curious timing. My thoughts exactly. After the gathering ended and Audrey left for her weekend with Valerie, Russell drove to the office. A small package sat on his desk, wrapped in simple brown paper with his name written in Valerie's distinctive hand. Inside was a miniature sculpture, a perfect replica of their old house, but with a significant alteration. The structure was split down the middle, revealing the interior. On one half, the rooms were in disarray, furniture overturned, walls cracked. On the other half, everything was meticulously ordered, rebuilt, strengthened. A note accompanied it. I understand now what you meant about foundations. V. Russell studied the piece, appreciating the craftsmanship and the message it conveyed. It wasn't an apology, not exactly, but it was an acknowledgement. Something he had demanded a year ago and now finally received, without conditions or audience. He placed the sculpture on his desk beside the family photo he still kept, a reminder of what had been lost and what had been gained through its loss. The next morning, Russell received a call from Dominic. He almost declined it, but curiosity won out. Russell. Dominic's voice was rough, diminished from the confident tones of their partnership days. I need to talk to you. I'm listening, Russell replied neutrally. My company's finished. You know that, I assume. I heard. A deep breath on the other end. I'm leaving town, starting over somewhere else. Good luck with that, Russell said, meaning it. Before I go, Dominic hesitated. I wanted to say I was wrong. About you, about everything. You didn't deserve what we did. The admission hung in the air between them, unexpected and years too late. No, Russell agreed. I didn't. I've lost everything, Dominic continued. The business, Valerie. She ended things months ago. My reputation. You won completely. This wasn't about winning, Russell corrected him. It was about consequences. Well, I've certainly experienced those. A bitter laugh. I just wanted to ask, are we ever square? Will there ever be a point where you consider this finished? Russell considered the question carefully. It was finished the day you all signed that statement. Everything since then has been the natural result of choices made long before. So you're not still orchestrating things against me? Against us? I haven't needed to, Russell replied honestly. The truth has its own momentum. After disconnecting, Russell sat at his desk, contemplating this latest development. Dominic leaving town. Valerie's tacit acknowledgement. The pieces of his calculated revenge had fallen exactly as he'd designed, the structure collapsing under its own weight once the support of lies was removed. That evening, Russell took Sophie to the lighthouse. As they walked along the shore, he found himself recounting Dominic's call, something he hadn't planned to share. And how do you feel about it? She asked when he finished. About all of it, now that it's played out as you intended? Russell considered her question more deeply than he had Gerald's similar one a year earlier. I don't regret my actions, he said finally. They needed to be held accountable. But I'm ready for it to be truly over, to focus on building rather than demolishing. Is that possible, do you think? To completely move beyond it? Not completely, he acknowledged. It's part of my foundation now. But foundations are meant to be built upon, not lived in. Sophie smiled, linking her arm through his. That's very architectural of you. Occupational hazard. He returned her smile. Speaking of architecture, there's something I've been wanting to discuss with you. A joint project of sorts. Her eyes lit with interest. "What kind of project?" "A renovation," he replied. "The lighthouse keeper's cottage has been abandoned for years. I've acquired the property and preliminary approval to restore it, with modern updates while preserving its historical significance." "That sounds fascinating," Sophie said. "But why a joint project?" "Because I thought it might be somewhere we could eventually share," Russell answered, watching her reaction carefully. "If that's something you might consider." Sophie's expression softened. "Russell Mercer, are you asking me to move in with you? In a hypothetical restored lighthouse cottage?" "I'm asking if you'd like to help design our future," he clarified. "The specifications are negotiable." She laughed, a warm, genuine sound that contrasted sharply with the cold, calculated laughter he remembered from that birthday party a year ago. "I like that very much." As they continued their walk, Russell reflected on the journey from that moment of shocking betrayal to this point of new beginning. He had not forgiven those who betrayed him. That had never been his intention. But he had built something stronger from the ruins, a clearer understanding of loyalty, a deeper bond with Audrey, a more honest relationship with Gerald, and now a future with Sophie based on mutual respect and shared values. The lighthouse beams swept across the darkening water, illuminating the path ahead momentarily before returning to darkness, then light again. A rhythm of revelation and shadow, clarity and mystery, not unlike the pattern of human relationships. Russell had always preferred clarity, even when the truth was painful. It was why he couldn't simply walk away when the betrayal was revealed, why he'd methodically ensured that everyone faced the consequences of their actions. "You're thinking very loudly," Sophie observed, squeezing his arm gently. "Just appreciating the view," Russell replied, looking not at the lighthouse, but at her. Some might call what he'd done revenge, he reflected. Perhaps it was. But it was also justice, cold and precise, like the architectural calculations that ensured a structure would stand against any storm. In the end, what he did next hadn't wiped the smiles from their faces through cruelty or violence, but through the systematic exposure of truth they had tried to hide. And now, with that chapter closed, he was ready to begin drafting a new design, one built not on the shifting sands of deception, but on the solid bedrock of honesty. That, ultimately, was the final calculation, the understanding that while the past couldn't be changed, the future remained his to architect. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen, and I'll see you there.